Hello and welcome to Illuminating Man, an intentional space created to explore the concepts of community, spirituality, and self work from the perspective of men on the path of illumination. My name is Ry King. I'm sitting here with my good friend and colleague, Ryan Albery. Ryan, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Ryan Albery. Um, my interest over the last years has definitely come to the point of wanting to share what I've learned about myself and what I've learned about all of these paths of being a man and being a human. I spent much of the last, 4 years now as a participant of the Mankind Project, member of the Mankind Project of Canada, an organization designed to promote men's community, men's self-development, um, and yeah, I'm really fascinated by non-dual teachings, yogic philosophy, shadow work, parts work, inner child work. I'm a life coach and a student of internal family systems um, counseling. Um, my intention is to share what I've learned along the path, what I've gained, what I've had to let go of, and some of the routes I've taken in hopes of helping someone else along their journey. Um, yeah, I think that's me. Rai, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. Well, I am a musician, a spiritual seeker. I'm constantly looking to better myself in whichever ways that I can in order to show up more fully in the world and be of benefit to my communities and the world as a whole. And so I'm looking at this as a way to continue to explore these paths and to share where I'm at on my path and my experiences, and hopefully that's of benefit to somebody out there.
So why don't you kick us off with our topic for the day, and then we can just get in on it.
Sounds good. So the jumping off point for this is, as you were talking about men's work with the Mankind Project, and I've been a part of a couple men's groups myself, and today we are going to be discussing what is men's work and why is men's work? Why do we need spaces for men to come together to do this type of work, and what is that work that we do in these spaces?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, like for me, as you and I've been talking about, it's like those things are always best to be defined, so we all know that we're talking about the same definitions of words. I look at the term men's work, and I've been playing around with that for many years. What does it mean? What does it mean? Why? I have the question of why. What is all of this? What is this human experience? Why do I perceive, believe? Why do I act certain ways and other times completely different ways? And so, yeah, I really ask a lot of questions in contemplation, and what is men's work and what does it mean to be a man is always a question that pops up in a lot of those contemplations. Let's start off with what does it mean to be a man? I mean, if we're doing men's work, well, who is a man? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I find that to be a difficult question to answer, and I think that a lot of people have different answers to that, and I think that ultimately it comes down to each individual. For myself, I see it as having to do with accepting responsibility, being present, being honest with yourself and others, and of course, going into that, it's like that doesn't necessarily describe being a man. That's like, just being human. But but myself being a biologically male adult,
You could just call it Illuminating Biologically Male Adults.
Yeah.
Podcast for biologically male adults on the path to illumination. Oh my God. Anyway, sorry.
It's a very difficult question to answer. I don't know. I'd like to hear your perspective on it.
Hot potato. Yeah, I still don't know. I mean, even after we've talked about this for a few hours between you and I, it's like I still don't really know. I mean, biologically, sure. In my pants, sure. But yeah, I mean, there's like a list of traits that I would want to say that a man or I should have or could have or do have that defines that, or traits or a certain list of actions that a man takes which defines that word or that phrase, a man, or energetics, like a certain way of being, or you said present, or like calm, courageous. I mean, but like you said, I always find myself being like, well, what does that mean to be a man? Like, does that mean that if men have that other people don't? And so yeah, I play with this one a lot. Like I said, for me, what it means is actually, I'll change. I'll take a different route with that. For me, I go back to tradition and, tradition, biology, roles, etc. And the best answer that I have right now is that what it means to me to be a man is a very like in a traditional sense. But when I say traditional sense, I mean parts of the traditional ways. So like I'm biologically, physiologically bigger than many women or people that don't identify as a man, I should say. So to me, being a man is someone who provides. Like if you think of the hearth and the hunter, well, it's like with my stature, with my size, I could hold a child. if it was a very simple world, I could hold a child all day long. But I would be better out on the run and on the hunt and those things. So that provider piece for me is part of what it means for me to be a man, just simply because of my physiology, the way that my body ended up. So part of it is that provider. Along with that goes that protector. Uh, there are people who don't identify as being a man that are bigger than me, stronger than me, smarter than me, faster than me. Every one of those things that a provider or a protector would want to be. So that, I'm not saying that you must be a man to be those things, but for me, I identify with those traditional roles for whatever reason, and I'm constantly shifting every day what this means and what that means, and how, and as you said, how do I show up in the world to benefit the world? Is that term is that term man limiting me? Is that term man honing me in to simplify so that I can give my gifts in my mission? A lot of traditional roles, the provider, the protector, um, and in community and partnership, that's not a that's my job, that's your job. It's always situational, of course, yet there's something in those roles that I feel, or like, mentally I identify with them, but in my feeling sense, it's like, I feel that protector energy, or protector, that's a role and an energy. So yeah, protector, provider, um, those would be on the masculine side of what it means to be a man. And there's more, of course. I mean, that we could talk literally just about this for the whole hour, but on the softer side of what it means to be a man, some call that feminine energy. It's to be, like, as you said, present, to be able to listen, to be able to be solid and still. You mentioned this in some of our conversations, and I quite liked it. To be patient, like not just striking at everything, striking when it's the right moment, aware. And again, I mean, all of these traits could be put into what does it mean to be human, yet I'm just saying I identify with those as someone who identifies as a man. Um, and another piece that's very important for me is the piece around vision. Um, yeah, this is where it kind of gets super interesting. It's like vision, mission, purpose on the sort of outward, forward moving side of my experience of being a man. And then there's this dance between like the determination and the creation. It's like the determination is like my hands, my actions, and the creation is like my softer side, being like letting go, opening up, being creative, being curious, what's already happening that I can put my energy towards effectively. So I mean, that's the best I've got, which is probably the best answer I've ever given, yet still feels so incomplete of what it means to be a man. But it's a lot about that action, taking action, creating the world I want to see, um, providing not only to my to my people, but to my own inner needs, um, providing to my community, to my larger community, to my region, to the world, and just leaving it a better place than I found it.
Yeah, it seems to me that there's something within myself, within my psyche or my biology, that really, and maybe it's purely socialized, I don't know, but it feels like deep to my core, these ideas of being a provider and a protector, and being solid and unshakable for for my community and for my families. I don't know if that's biological. I don't know if that's in spiritually inherited. Who knows?
Yeah, is it biology? Is it programming? Is it spiritual mission? Like who? Yeah, there's no good answer to almost any question when you start to really go into the deeper. It's like just comes to a point. Like I don't know.
There definitely seems to be biological. I mean, obviously, there's biological differences between men and women. But then, in terms of interests and personality, you know, like I definitely was not socialized to fight when I was a kid, but I loved fighting. And I still do. You know, there's some part of me that's just like that just wants to fight and wants to have those have that experience in life, and that's why I've ended up exploring martial arts as a way to harness and channel that drive.
Yeah, it's like when we talk about to be a man, what it means to be a man to us, anyways. You know, and this might be new to some people. This might be review to some people, but the concepts or facts about masculine and feminine energy within. I mean, we heard a lot of in the 60s and 70s. I think I wasn't there, but about embracing your inner feminine, and I think that got taken the wrong way, and a lot of people took it as like embrace your inner female, and like that's it's that if men do that they're going to lose something, that and maybe they did, and maybe it was a pendulum that swung from like the 50s 40s and 50s war hero, I'm the man of the house male, to the all the way over to the like long haired free love music and flow and dance 60s and 70s stereotypical male. I mean, they're both stereotypes, of course, but yeah, in this conversation, it keeps coming to me of like, okay, well, masculine and feminine energy, the duality of life, the hard and the soft, the dark and the light. Excuse me. The hard and the soft, the dark and the light. All of the quote unquote opposites, the hot and the cold, the penetrating and receiving. And yeah, when you say that that piece around fighting, it's like I just immediately think of like masculine energy and this piece that made sense to me when I heard it. I mean, do I know that it's scientifically true? Well, no, but it seems accurate in my experience of this like desire for challenge, or this desire for like breaking through to the other side, or like pushing up against something and then it falls, or like coming into this clash. And we see it in all mammals anyways, this sort of this dance or competition for a mate, or for food, or for superiority, or for all these things, right? But yeah, I definitely just think of like how that love for, I mean, it can be like banter, or it can be like you see it in music, like hip hop battles, or like this team going against that team, or this man in the ring against that man, person in the ring. And yeah, it's like, I mean, I love it too. Like, I just love.
You're getting a really weird noise there.
Oh yeah, it's like these notifications are happening. I don't know how to turn them off, so stop. See if I can do this. So, yeah, it's just like this like want to. It's almost like on the side of play. It's almost like the sort of the hard or rough side of play, and the duality of life. There would be the hard side of play, the arguing, the bantering, the bickering, the competition, the challenge against nature, overcoming, climbing this peak, or overcoming this natural force. And I think those things make me feel alive, anyways. And when I'm in that struggle point, I'm not thinking about the past or the future, or like any of my problems. I'm thinking about like this thing in front of me. And that presence piece that you spoke to, kind of, when you say this fighting thing, it's like, oh, it kind of connects to that, like this presence. And in some of the studies that I've engaged in around masculine and feminine energy, it's like they go as far to say, and I have no idea where this comes from. I'm sure it's from some very old Eastern philosophy, but it's like that the feminine is all of life, and the masculine is the space that it happened in. So consciousness. So feminine is life, masculine is consciousness. I mean, that might be a little far out for the purposes of our conversation, but it's the feminine, not necessarily females, but feminine energy feeling full, masculine energy feeling empty, pushing through that goal line to where it's just like, oh, finally freedom. Like, think of football, like you're 2 yards out from the goal line and just push through, and it's just like freedom. I've made it for those few moments. Or like having an orgasm, it's like just pushing and pushing and pushing in whatever way. and then release, and that just like euphoric peace. Like I've let go. I've made it through. I'm finally here just for this moment. Then petite, what do they say in French? Little death for orgasms. Like this. Finally, there's completion. Yeah, that piece around fighting just set me off on like the whole thing. But yeah, it's that's inherent in me too. Like the want to win, and there's healthier ways of doing that, of course, like with agreements and rules and a proper container. But that allowing that to move is, for me, part of being a man also, which is, kind of the cool part about doing men's work, is that things that we may not move while out in society, we get to move in those types of spaces or arenas or containers in a way that's designed to help us mature and grow up and expand, connect more with our truth and our gift that we give to ourselves and to our communities and to our planet. So yeah, fighting.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people who identify as men can relate to these things that we're talking about. And to be in spaces that are for men to express these things safely is valuable.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like, if I don't ever practice with anger, well, how am I going to know how to do it in a healthy way? If I'm suppressing it, repressing it to the point, which I've done in my life, I've lived that to the point where something sets it off, and then all of this repressed anger comes out, and it seems totally out of line. Yet, in the deeper understanding of psyche and the emotions, it's like, okay, well, that was just a lot that never got expressed or let go of before, preferably let go of, but expressed anyway. And it got pushed in, and it got pushed in, and that pressure from that continual application of those suppressed or repressed emotions, specifically anger, just like flies out. So yeah, in that healthy way. I mean, it's like boxing practice. It's like, if I just go out and get in fights, it's like, well, I didn't ever get the chance to practice. Like they'll say a barroom brawl. You don't really get a chance to practice. Whereas if you go into a space where you've got a container, I mean, that's, for those of you that don't know what a container is, it's a space created with certain agreements. I mean, there's probably better definitions or other definitions, but it's a space created with intention and agreements on how it looks, and the skills and power to deal with whatever comes up. So if I don't ever step into a healthy space, then how am I ever going to know how to do those things in real time? Specifically, like, I mean, I'm using the example of anger, which I think is a good one. Like, how am I going to just express that natural human emotion? Well, what I did in my life was I stuffed it because I didn't want to appear a certain way, and then I couldn't hold it anymore and just started exploding out. And I didn't even know I was doing that most of the time until I knew, and then all of a sudden it was like, whoa. But yeah, those spaces are, as you say, those safe, healthy spaces to practice accountability, practice emotions, practice being vulnerable, practice being angry, practice asking for help or saying I'm wrong, which I guess goes into the second part of how we started this, was like defining those words. So like the work, I mean, it's humanity's evolution work, hopefully, so we survive, is part of that. But as we're talking about bringing it back to ourselves first, myself first, like, what is the work side of that mean to you?
You asking me?
Yeah, well, I kind of phrased that funny, I realized, but essentially bringing it back to us, like, and defining what, inner work or men's work. Yeah, men's work, let's call it that. Like, we should define the second half of that phrase, men's work, because that's what we're talking about. So for you, like, what is the work or personal work mean? Like, who, what, when, where, why, how?
Yeah, well, I like what you're saying. I like your use of the word practice. And for me, it's a lot about learning to embody those principles that we talked about, namely presence, mission, uh, learning to stand as a provider and a protector, and figuring out what it is that keeps me from fully embodying those principles within myself. What things are going on within me that are holding me back, and learning how to work through those and be a stronger and better man.
Hmm. Yeah, I hear that. Like, that's how I got on this whole thing, was, well, I guess there was one step before that. How do I have a better life? Because life wasn't so good at numerous points of my journey. Well, I mean, I judged it as being not so good. It's a whole other conversation about why I phrased it that way. But um, yeah, I mean, I got into this by, like, literally, like, I Googled, how do you get your ex back? And this is how this all started. And it went from, there was this dating and relationship coach online, and then I read his book, and then I read the books that he referred to in his book, and I was trying to have a better life. Like, I learned along the way that I had to be a better man to have a better life, and then there's, of course, many, many stages after that of beyond just how can I make my personal life better. And that's where the mission and the self-fulfillment and giving from that full place starts to come into the conversation. But definitely, like, it started from, how do I have a better life / be a better man?
Do you think that there's different ways to achieve satisfaction in life that are unique to men and women? I'm generalizing, of course.
I'm gonna drop the first F-bomb. Let's say fuck you for asking me that. That's a very hard question, very challenging question, I should say. I'm just playing. I'm just playing. I mean, I think that goes back to what we were speaking about when we were trying to define what it meant to be a man for ourselves, let alone what it means to be a man in the overarching term. But I think it's kind of the same. It's like fulfillment. Fulfillment, in my perspective or belief, or however you would say it, is largely circumstantial or individual, and this is my opinion, anyways, my belief. Because I don't think we all want the same things. I mean, I perceive that we all want something different or slightly different, or on the earlier levels of conversation. I mean, on a deeper level, we all want the same thing. It's I don't know exactly what that is or how to phrase it, but I just know that we all want the same thing, and that gets into a whole other conversation around that. So let's leave that for another time. But I mean, on the more human side of things, it's definitely that we want something different to be fulfilled. You know, like I believe that because of my studies of the conscious and unconscious minds and how the psyche works and shadows and parts, and parts being like inner children, inner critics, inner saboteurs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, go on, archetypal energies, and how they show up in each of us differently. So, I mean, there's the nature and the nurture. So the nature being, my ancestral information being passed down through the genetics, that would probably influence, my desires, my drives, the things that would fulfill those desires and drives. But also I believe that a lot of it is to do with, we spoke about nature, but there's also nature and nurture being the, sort of what our experience was from, being in the womb for 9 months to being born where and astrologically at what time probably affects it. I mean, there's a lot of studies around that. A lot of people who believe firmly in that. I've seen a lot of things in that make me believe that there's something to it. But beyond that, like what the parents that we were born to, how they were feeling at the time, what unmet needs they had, and how they were projected onto us or given energetically to us. I think it's very circumstantial, like as far as what's fulfilling on one level. I mean, on another level, I would contradict all of that, but again, that's a different conversation. And for me, like it evolves all the time. Like the other piece I want to add to that is like what level of us is being fulfilled. We go back to the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual sort of aspects of a human being, and it's like, well, what's going to fulfill me physically? Well, it's regular sex, regular food, having a comfortable environment, or an environment that I perceive to be comfortable. And then it starts to make me feel, it's like, okay, well, are those things fulfilling from shadow or from an integrated place? Are these fulfilling because I didn't get those as a child, or are they fulfilling because and I still have that empty hole in me from childhood? Or are they fulfilling because it's like I've worked through those, and it just brings a certain type of energy that comes when I've, let's say, pushed through that goal line, or I've won that competition with life, or we danced well together, even to make it less masculine. We danced well together, and it's just an alive, full feeling, alive, full, non-attached feeling. So yeah, I think it's different person to person. So yeah, then to answer your question, it would be different man to woman, but it'd also be different man to man. In my very short answer that I give you to that.
Yeah.
What do you think? Yeah. Like, how do you see that?
My gut instinct is that there are different things that are required by a man or a woman to feel fulfillment. And I agree, of course it's different for everybody. But myself, I feel like I won't feel a sense of true fulfillment until I feel like I am standing fully in that mode of protector and provider, and until I am have gone through enough challenges in that to really trust in myself in those roles. And I
So I'd
think,
ask you, how would you know when you've experienced enough or proven yourself enough to feel fulfilled in that way? Like what's the barometer? Like what's the bar when you're like is that bar clear to you?
yeah, I mean that's a good question. I don't know that I have an answer for that. Uh, I guess no, the bar is not clear to me.
Hmm.
None of this is really clear to me.
Well, that's probably why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Like nothing's really that clear if you start looking at it. Like, huh? When I start looking at it, anyways. Yeah, I mean, I think like just to go back to the intention here is like part of that, part of the intention for this space we're creating or we've created and will continue to create, and the things that we've talked about creating in the future. It is to get clear on what we can, anyways. And for me, that's part of being my version of a man is clarity. And that's clarity of vision, clarity of action, clarity of knowing when completion has happened. So, you know, that bar that we're talking about, getting clear on my mission and getting clear on an action. Is it in alignment with my mission? When do I know that that mission is over and the next one must begin? Or, you know, or clarity of like how much space I take in between to rejuvenate. Let's use the battle analogy. You know, how much time do I need to heal all these cuts and bruises and wounds from the last battle? Yet we won the battle, let's say. How much time do I take, or do we just go right back into it? So like a lot of my work right now is in creating clarity, and to bring it back to the more tangible level, it's like in clarity in communication, clarity in intention, clarity in experience, through vulnerability and truth and courage of sharing, even when it's scary or that I might get rejected or make up the story that I've been rejected. It's a lot of this for me is about creating clarity, and in this specific project is creating clarity, creating spaces where other people can find their clarity.
Mm-hmm.
So I get a little personal, little tickle when I find something that's unclear in me. I'm like, ooh, like a mountain to climb, like I love climbing mountains or something. But or ooh, look at that wave to go surf. I mean, I'm in Costa Rica right now, so I'm thinking of challenges that people do here. But yeah, it does bring some excitement to me when I hear someone else that's like, oh, I actually don't know, or when I feel that, it's the same thing. Like, oh, great! Like now here's an opportunity for men's work slash human work slash the work of consciousness to happen. It's like an opportunity. So I was excited when you said I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot I don't know, so
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. The more I think I know, the less I know. It's kind of a funny paradox.
yeah, I expect as we go through this podcast, we'll just keep running into more and more and more questions, and
Which is perfect because then we have more and more and more episodes to
yeah.
give our friends out there something to listen to on the journey through life. Something else to listen to, like there's nothing out there already. Um, so what? Let's bring it to the world the world we're in now. What? Why do you think the time? I believe the time is right now for this stuff to take a quantum leap. I don't even know what a quantum leap is, but it sounds super cool. Sounds like some sort of like Star Trek thing, you know. I mean, I know you're a Trekkie, so like you might know what a quantum leap is, but it's time to take like this step forward, you know, the step up, the step in, the step forward. So, I mean, that's my belief. Um, Again, that could come from biology or programming or spiritual mission or whatever, but I think that it's time for people to start growing up and showing up. Like, what do you think needs to happen?
That's a good question, and I think that brings up a point that I wanted to get to, which is, you know, there's it seems to be less of a buzzword these days, but toxic masculinity is a subject that's been explored a lot in recent years, and whatever that means, I don't, you know, I'm sure everyone's got their own definitions of that. I don't personally like the term.
Yeah, I've had a reaction to it
Yeah.
in the past.
But I can see what people are referring to. And, you know, when we talk about why do we need men's work, and I think that men's work, men's groups, men getting together and discussing these ideas is an antidote to that overinflated, ego driven masculinity that, you know, causes men to uh, be assholes, to to disrespect and abuse women, and
For themselves and other men.
what's that?
Well, I said or themselves and other men, but I should say and themselves and other men.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think we do have a great need in this world for men to step up and grow up spiritually, to come into spiritual maturity, and emotional maturity.
Yeah, I was going to say maturity on all the levels.
Yeah. Um, and so I guess that kind of answers the why of men's work for me, which is good. I was hoping to get there.
Right.
Because most men who are in that mode of overinflated masculinity, overinflated ego, desire to compete with others in unhealthy ways, desire to control and manipulate women. Those guys
Those guys
are not gonna
I've never been toxic.
are not gonna be able to change that, I think, unless they start seeing a different way of being a man. And being able to explore all of that with other men in situations that are just for men.
Yeah, are you through with that one?
Go ahead.
Yeah, that I want to just go back to that thing that I said a little while ago, that I had a reaction to that term, and I just want to speak a moment to that. It's not so much resistance to what I believe is the underlying definition of that. It's more the actual phrase, because I like to call it, shadow masculinity or immature masculinity, and I mean, at that point, it's like, is it even masculinity? That's a whole other conversation. But to me, toxic, like, I think, if I'm correct, the definition of toxic is the dose relative to the substance. So, you can have water toxicity by having too much water. And so the reason why I have resistance to that term is because it's like, it implies that too much masculinity is then toxic. But if I'm correct with that definition. So it's just the term toxic because I think that consciously or unconsciously, by whoever coined that term, it implies that the masculinity itself, when there's too much of it, can be toxic. But masculinity is a healthy term. So it's saying too much healthy masculinity is now toxic masculinity. And I don't believe that should be true. I believe that it's shadow masculinity, like masculinity in its immature forms, boyhood psychology, boyhood mentality, if anybody's following like Jungian approaches to masculinity and manhood. But it's just that word toxic for me. So I would call it like immature masculinity at that, but I like better boyhood psychology, that hero mentality. It's like, well, I'm going to be the hero. That makes me important. Or I'm going to be then I'm going to be the impressive one. And yeah, you kind of get where I'm going with why I have resistance to that term.
Yeah, totally. I just looked up the definition of toxicity or toxic, and all it says here is poisonous or very harmful or unpleasant in a pervasive or insidious way.
Right.
But here we go. Even water can lead to water intoxication when taken in too high a dose. So you're right.
Yeah. And I mean, and then I would take the other side of that too, of like toxic masculinity being, where was I going? I just had a thought that was valid to share, and then it's kind of slipped. But let's say, it's like, I would say it's like toxic males, not toxic masculinity, because we go into the back into the conversation of like masculine and feminine energy. Well, potentially someone who's only masculine, which could then relate to how the definition around like too much of some substance, that might be toxic too. Like too much masculinity and being out of balance with one's feminine energy, the softer side, the listening, the receptivity, the ability to sit and be patient before taking an action. That may be toxic also, like just straight up too much masculinity. But the resistance is not so much in that approach to it. It's in the approach that I perceive to be taken by things I hear and things I read, which is just that, like, it's a form of masculinity that's toxic. But I don't think that there are toxic forms of masculinity. Maybe if someone's like 99% masculine and totally disregarded their feminine, that it might be toxic also. But I think the phrase is being misused or misdefined and then overused, and it's created this what I perceive to be this thing that's not really understood yet is being used all over the place to describe something in a way that's not accurate, which creates different problems, I guess. Yeah, there might be just too much masculinity toxicity. I've never really like gotten to that part of contemplating that, but yeah, it's something worth looking at also. Out of balance, too penetrative, too forward moving, too goal oriented, too like all of these things that are good, but if it's just that, it could be toxic masculinity also.
Right.
I'm just going to keep moving forward, not listening to anybody. I'm going to keep moving forward, not like having anybody with me in connection. Those may be toxic. So there might be two ways of using that term. One of them I'm more open to, for sure.
Yeah, I just get bothered by the use of the term toxic. I think it's like I just get bothered by the use of the term toxic in general. People are always referring to toxic relationships or toxic masculinity or toxic spirituality or whatever the fuck people want to say. I don't know. I just think it's
yeah, totally. And then my question is, okay, so if there's toxic masculinity, that implies that there's toxic femininity, and what is that? I have no idea. Right. So it's really this term that's very, very widely used and not, in my judgment anyways, not very widely understood or well created and well balanced. Because if there's toxic this, there's toxic that. In those conversations. But yeah, it just kind of irks me, because partially because I don't understand. The people who use it a lot, like I don't understand how they're using it. It's often an emotionally charged conversation. I perceive, anyways, when that term gets used by someone who's feeling like a victim to that, or may or may not be in feeling like it or in victim mentality at the time. And then I get emotionally charged because I don't understand their experience, when really that's what I want, is to understand their experience and to hear that. And it's often when those conversations come up in my world, it seems like the essence of the conversation is lost, and the want to blame or the want to just make it easy to understand so that some relief may come of it, or some change may come of it. And that's part of why I get triggered by that too, is because it's like I don't think labeling something like that is actually all that helpful. Labeling anything in any way when there's those emotional charges, and not to discredit or to undermine the emotional charges that happen, of course not. I just think that there's so much placed on like defining something, and now we know what it is, and now we have an enemy to fight against, and it's really like this term that's it's like this sort of like I want to say shadow enemy, but it's like almost like mist, like there's this like a hologram. There's this enemy in front of us, this hologram of toxic masculinity. Now we know, but we go to run our sword through it, and it's not there because it's not actually of substance on deeper level. I mean, it's easy to point out, oh, that's toxic masculinity when this guy over here is being like that towards this other person, male or female, man or woman, or other, or whatever. But yeah, it's just the limitedness of it when a few questions are asked to find out what that actually is. So I mean, I'm not against that. There's things that male or masculine energy or immature males or masculine energy are doing in the world, but it's just about it feels like it's the wrong direction, which then bring it back to men's work, and it's like, well, that's an arena where men, myself included, can go to to find out where they're at, to do that self-discovery with other people who are creating a space for them to do that in a healthy way. As we've mentioned multiple times, it's all about the healthy, intentional manner of practicing those things, of that practice of making our masculinity whole and integrated.
Yeah. I like the terms immature masculinity as an alternative to that, or even just an unskillful use of masculine energy, an unskillful expression of masculinity, or an uncontained expression of masculinity.
I think using terms like that opens more doors to actual shifts into higher expression, higher ways of being with others, higher ways of being in community. That is.
Yeah. So maybe it could be said that men's work, as opposed to human work, is the work of accessing and containing and skillfully directing our masculine energy, which the masculine energy comes more naturally to a man, and then also learning to access and not repress feminine energy, and learning how to integrate that into ourselves. And I perhaps that's where men's work differs from either women's work or human work.
Yeah, I think how you just stated that is beautiful, and I also just got a notification from my computer, so I think these two pieces that are showing up in my computer experiences right now are saying that's a good place to call it.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. Okay, thanks everybody for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you'll come back and listen again in the future. You can check the show notes for a link to subscribe to our mailing list, and you can email us at info@illuminatingman.com if you want to ask any questions, suggest a topic for the future. If you have any responses to anything that we've been talking about today that you want us to bring up on a future episode, and maybe contribute to the discussion, send it our way.
All right, everybody, I'm going to sign out. Thanks, Rye, for the conversation. We'll talk soon, and thank you, everybody, for listening. I really appreciate exploring with you all with this topic. It's very dear to my heart, and I'm glad that we're doing this, and I'm glad for everybody who's checking us out.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Thanks, everybody else. Have yourself a lovely day.